What if the biggest royal standoff of 2026 isn't about money, titles, or even public image, but about time running out? Because according to explosive reports, Prince Harry has made it clear that without the security protections he believes his family needs, Archie and Lilibet will not be traveling to the United Kingdom. On the surface, it sounds like a father protecting his children. But inside palace circles, many believe the situation is far more complicated than that. And here's where things become impossible to ignore. King Charles is continuing treatment while carrying the enormous responsibility of the crown. Yet despite the emotional weight of the situation, he reportedly responded to Harry's position with complete silence. No public statement, no counteroffer, no visible effort to challenge the demand. Just silence. But in the world of royalty, silence can speak louder than any speech ever could. Tonight, we're taking a closer look at the growing divide between father and son, the question surrounding Balmoral's existing security, Prince William's reported role behind the scenes, and the heartbreaking reality that Archie and Lilibet are growing up thousands of miles away from a grandfather whose future remains uncertain. Because while lawyers argue, headlines explode, and positions harden, one question keeps getting louder. How many summers are left before this opportunity is gone forever? The moment this story surfaced, most people focused on the headline itself. Prince Harry reportedly making it clear that without the security arrangements he believes are necessary for his family, Archie and Lilibet would not be traveling to the United Kingdom. It immediately sparked debate across social media, television panels, royal commentary channels, and newspaper columns on both sides of the Atlantic. Some people saw a father doing exactly what a father should do, placing the safety of his children above everything else. Others saw something entirely different. They saw a growing family dispute becoming tied to a much larger institutional battle that has been unfolding for years. But to understand why this latest development created such a powerful reaction, you have to understand something about the royal family that many people outside the United Kingdom often miss. The monarchy survives on stability. It survives on routine. It survives on the idea that personal feelings, no matter how intense, do not override institutional rules. Every monarch eventually learns that difficult lesson. Every heir learns it too. And that is exactly why so many observers were fascinated by what happened next. Because after all the headlines, after all the discussions, after all the speculation, there was reportedly no dramatic response from King Charles. No public disagreement. No emotional statement. No visible attempt to argue his position through the press. Just silence. For many people, that silence was confusing. Why wouldn't a grandfather publicly fight for the chance to see his grandchildren? Why wouldn't a father respond to such a significant condition? Why wouldn't a king use every resource available to find solution? Those questions sound simple. The answers are anything but. Because the relationship between Prince Harry and the institution he left behind has been under strain for years. Long before this latest controversy, disagreements over security had already become one of the most important issues in the entire Sussex story. Court challenges, legal arguments, public interviews, and countless news reports have all revolved around the same central question. What level of protection should Prince Harry receive now that he is no longer a working royal? That debate has never truly disappeared. Instead, it has continued in the background, influencing nearly every discussion surrounding Harry's visits to Britain. And that's where this latest situation becomes so significant. According to reports, the issue isn't simply about a family visit. It's about whether a broader security disagreement should influence access between grandparents and grandchildren. That distinction matters because once those two issues become connected, every possible response becomes complicated. Imagine for a moment that you are King Charles. You are not simply a father. You are not simply a grandfather. You are also the reigning monarch. Every decision you make is examined from multiple angles. Personal consequences become public consequences. Emotional choices become institutional choices. Now imagine facing a situation where one path satisfies your heart, but creates questions about precedent. Another path protects the institution, but risks appearing cold. And a third path avoids immediate damage, but leaves the entire issue unresolved. Suddenly, the silence starts looking different. Because sometimes silence is not the absence of a decision. Sometimes silence is the decision. What makes this story even more emotional is the timing. King Charles is not dealing with this issue during an ordinary period of his life. He is continuing treatment while carrying out the responsibilities of the crown. Public appearances continue. Official duties continue. State responsibilities continue. Yet beneath all of that remains the reality that age and health inevitably change how people view time. When people are young, they often believe opportunities will always exist in the future. Another summer, another holiday, another family gathering, another chance to repair a strained relationship. But as years pass, people begin to understand something uncomfortable. The future is not unlimited, and that realization changes everything. For many royal watchers, that is what gives this story its emotional power. Because beneath the headlines about security and legal disputes lies something much more universal. A grandfather who reportedly wants a closer relationship with his grandchildren. A son who insists certain conditions must be met before that relationship can develop in the way many people hope. And two children who are growing older every single year, while adults continue debating issues they had no role in creating. That is why this story resonates far beyond royal fans. You don't need to live in a palace to understand family distance. You don't need a royal title to understand complicated relationships. You don't need security briefings or official advisors to understand how quickly childhood passes. Every family has experienced some version of this reality. A disagreement that lasts longer than expected. A conversation that never happens. An invitation that remains unanswered. A reconciliation that gets postponed again and again until years have quietly disappeared. And that may be one reason this story generates such strong emotions whenever it resurfaces. Because people aren't only reacting to Harry and Charles. They're reacting to their own experiences, their own regrets, their own family fractures, their own memories of opportunities that vanished before anyone realized how precious they were. The situation becomes even more fascinating when analysts begin discussing Balmoral. For generations, Balmoral has represented something very different from official royal life. It is often described as one of the places where members of the royal family can experience a more private existence away from the intense pressures that normally surround them. Unlike highly public events in London, Balmoral offers a controlled environment, extensive grounds, and long-standing security infrastructure. That reality has led many commentators to ask an important question. If a private family visit were the goal, could such a visit potentially happen within a setting already known for privacy and security? The question itself has fueled enormous debate. Supporters of Harry argue that a parent has every right to determine what level of protection is acceptable for their children. Supporters of the king's position argue that existing arrangements could potentially accommodate a family gathering without changing broader security policies. And somewhere between those two perspectives sits the reality that nobody outside the family truly knows every detail of the discussions taking place behind closed doors. What the public sees is only a small fraction of the full picture. What makes the entire situation even more intriguing is that every passing year seems to increase the pressure. Not institutional pressure, not political pressure, human pressure, the kind created by time itself. Because Archie and Lilibet are not remaining the same age. Every birthday changes the equation. Every school year changes the equation. Every summer changes the equation. The relationship that exists between a grandparent and a 7-year-old is different from the relationship that exists between a grandparent and a teenager. Childhood memories are created during specific windows of time. Once those windows close, they cannot simply be reopened. That reality may be the most powerful element of this entire story. Not the legal arguments, not the security dispute, not the royal politics, the clock. The simple fact that while discussions continue, life continues too. And that brings us back to King Charles's silence. Because perhaps the most important question isn't why he remained silent. Perhaps the more important question is what that silence actually means. Is it frustration, patience, strategy, hope, resignation? Or is it the response of someone who understands that some family conflicts cannot be solved through public statements, media campaigns, or institutional pressure? Whatever the answer may be, one thing is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. The gap between Prince Harry and the royal family is no longer measured only in geography. It is measured in years. And with every passing season, the conversation becomes less about what happened in the past and more about what opportunities may still remain in the future. As the debate continued, another question began emerging from royal commentators, former palace insiders, and longtime observers of the monarchy. It was a question that shifted the conversation away from headlines and towards something much deeper. What exactly is being negotiated here? Because on the surface, the issue appears straightforward. Prince Harry has consistently argued that security concerns affect his willingness to bring Archie and Lilibet to the United Kingdom. His supporters point out that he has spoken publicly about the threats he believes his family faces and why those concerns remain serious. From that perspective, the issue is simple. A father wants guarantees before placing his children in an environment he considers potentially risky. But others see a different story unfolding. They argue that the discussion has gradually evolved beyond a single trip or a single visit. According to this interpretation, the disagreement is no longer only about one summer, one holiday, or one family reunion. Instead, it has become part of a larger battle over what Harry's long-term relationship with the institution should look like after stepping away from royal duties. That distinction matters, because temporary solutions and permanent solutions are very different things. A temporary solution addresses a specific situation. A permanent solution establishes a precedent. And when institutions are involved, precedents often matter more than individual moments. This is where Prince William enters the conversation. Unlike King Charles, who is often described by commentators as someone who leaves doors open and prefers gradual reconciliation, William is frequently portrayed as more direct, more structured, and more focused on long-term consequences. Whether that portrayal is completely accurate or not, it has become a common theme throughout years of royal reporting. Many analysts believe William views decisions through a different lens than Charles. Charles may naturally focus on repairing relationships. William may naturally focus on protecting institutional stability. Neither approach is necessarily right or wrong. They simply produce different priorities. And when those priorities collide, difficult choices emerge. Imagine inheriting an institution that has survived for centuries precisely because it maintains consistent rules. Now imagine creating an exception under intense public pressure. Even if the exception solves an immediate problem, it may create questions that last for decades. That is why some observers believe William would be reluctant to support any arrangement that appears to change established policy because of media pressure or emotional circumstances. From that perspective, the issue becomes larger than Harry, larger than Charles, even larger than the current generation of royals. It becomes about the future structure of the monarchy itself. Whether people agree with that viewpoint or not, it helps explain why this story remains so complicated. Because every participant may be looking at the same situation while seeing entirely different risks. Harry may see a safety issue. Charles may see a family issue. William may see an institutional issue. And each perspective leads to different conclusions. Meanwhile, the public watches from the outside, attempting to interpret events based on fragments of information, anonymous sources, and competing narratives. That uncertainty creates a vacuum. And whenever a vacuum exists, speculation rushes in to fill it. Some commentators argue that Harry is standing firm because he believes fundamental principles are involved. Others argue that Charles is standing firm because certain boundaries cannot be crossed. Still others believe both sides genuinely want resolution, but remain trapped by circumstances that neither side can easily overcome. The truth may contain elements of all three explanations. What nobody disputes, however, is the emotional cost of continued distance. Because while institutions can survive long disputes, families experience those disputes differently. Institutions think in decades. Families live in moments. A monarchy can wait years for an issue to resolve. A child cannot relive years once they have passed. And that reality keeps bringing attention back to Archie and Lilibet. Whenever their names enter the conversation, the tone changes. Suddenly, people stop discussing policies and begin discussing childhood. They stop discussing legal frameworks and begin discussing memories. They stop discussing royal strategy and begin discussing family bonds. Because children introduce a different kind of urgency. Children grow. Children change. Children develop relationships based on shared experiences. And those experiences cannot be stored for later. They either happen or they don't. That is why many commentators describe this situation as a race against time rather than a traditional royal dispute. Every year creates new memories. Every missed opportunity becomes part of a larger pattern. Every postponed visit becomes another chapter in a story that grows more difficult to rewrite. For King Charles, that reality may carry particular weight. Over the years, numerous biographies and reports have described him as someone deeply interested in family connections. Whether discussing his role as a father, grandfather, or monarch, many accounts portray a man who values continuity between generations. That is one reason reports about his relationship with Archie and Lilibet attract so much attention. Because they touch on something fundamentally human. The desire to know one's family. The desire to share experiences. The desire to build memories while time still allows it. Those desires exist whether someone lives in a palace or an ordinary neighborhood. And they become even more powerful when uncertainty enters the picture. Health has a way of changing priorities. It forces people to evaluate what matters most. It reminds them that opportunities are finite. It transforms abstract future plans into urgent present concerns. For many observers, that reality sits quietly beneath every headline involving Charles and Harry. The security debate may dominate public discussion, but underneath lies a more personal question. How much time remains for reconciliation? No journalist can answer that. No palace spokesperson can answer that. No royal expert can answer that. Because time follows its own rules. And time has become one of the most important characters in this entire story. Every statement, every disagreement, every negotiation, every period of silence, all of it unfolds against a clock that never stops moving. That is what makes this situation feel different from many previous royal controversies. Most royal scandals revolve around reputation. This one revolves around opportunity. Most royal disputes focus on power. This one increasingly focuses on connection. Most royal stories are about what happened. This one is increasingly about what may never happen if the current trajectory continues. And that possibility is what keeps drawing public attention back to the story again and again. Because people understand consequences. They understand distance. They understand regret. Many people have experienced family disagreements that lasted longer than intended. A few months became a few years. A few years became a decade. Eventually, the original disagreement mattered less than the lost time itself. That lesson appears repeatedly throughout family histories all over the world. Sometimes reconciliation happens. Sometimes it doesn't. But when people look back, they rarely remember every detail of the argument. They remember the birthdays that were missed, the holidays that passed, the conversations that never occurred, the memories that were never created. And perhaps that is why this story continues generating such strong reactions. Because beneath the royal titles, beneath the media coverage, beneath the legal discussions and institutional concerns, there remains a simple human reality. A father, a son, a grandfather, 2 children, and a growing awareness that every season which passes is one that can never be reclaimed. As more reports emerge and more speculation fills the headlines, that reality becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. The debate may appear to be about security, but for many people watching from around the world, the deeper issue is becoming something else entirely. Time is moving forward. The children are growing older. The family remains divided. And nobody Not Harry, not Charles, not William, not palace advisors, not commentators, can pause the clock while they decide what happens next. As the story continues to unfold, there is one uncomfortable reality that neither side can completely escape. No matter how complicated the arguments become, no matter how many legal discussions take place, and no matter how many headlines are written, the public keeps returning to the same fundamental question. What happens if time runs out before a solution is found? That question has become impossible to ignore because this dispute is no longer viewed solely through a political or institutional lens. It has become deeply personal. Every new report about security arrangements, family communication, or potential visits immediately leads people back to the same emotional concern. Will Archie and Lilibet have the opportunity to build meaningful memories with their grandfather while that opportunity still exists? For many observers, that concern sits at the center of everything. Because unlike debates about titles, protocol, or public appearances, relationships cannot simply be restored with an official announcement. Relationships are built through experiences, through ordinary moments, through repeated contact, through time spent together. And time is exactly what nobody can guarantee. Over the last several years, the relationship between Prince Harry and the royal family has become one of the most analyzed family dynamics in the world. Interviews have been conducted, books have been written, documentaries have been released, experts have offered theories. Supporters on both sides have defended their positions with enormous passion. Yet despite all that attention, one fact remains unchanged. The distance still exists. The disagreements still exist. The uncertainty still exists. And perhaps that is why King Charles's reported silence has attracted so much attention. Some people interpret that silence as disappointment. Others see patience. Some see strategy. Others see a father refusing to escalate an already painful situation. Whatever interpretation people choose, one thing appears increasingly clear. Public confrontation was never likely to produce the outcome Charles wanted. A public battle would only deepen divisions. A public refusal would generate even more headlines. A public argument would place family disagreements at the center of global attention once again. Instead, the reported approach has been restraint. And restraint often looks very different from strength in the modern media environment. Today, people expect immediate reactions, immediate statements, immediate responses. Silence feels unusual because silence leaves questions unanswered. But unanswered questions also leave possibilities alive. And perhaps that is why this situation remains unresolved rather than permanently closed. The possibility of reconciliation still exists. The possibility of compromise still exists. The possibility of a future meeting still exists. As long as those possibilities remain, the story remains unfinished. Yet unfinished stories can only remain unfinished for so long. Eventually, circumstances make decisions on behalf of people. Eventually, opportunities expire. Eventually, moments pass. That reality becomes even more powerful when considering the ages of Archie and Lilibet. Childhood moves quickly, much quicker than adults realize while living through it. One day, children are learning to ride bicycles. The next day, they are teenagers building independent lives. The years that feel endless in the moment often appear remarkably brief when viewed in hindsight. Parents understand this. Grandparents understand this. Anyone who has watched children grow understands this. And that is why so many people view this situation through an emotional rather than political lens. Because the conversation is no longer just about what happened in the past. It is about what kind of future remains possible. Could there still be summers spent together? Could there still be family traditions created? Could there still be memories that bridge the distance which has defined recent years? Nobody outside the family knows. And perhaps even those inside the family don't know. But uncertainty itself has become part of the story. The uncertainty surrounding future visits. The uncertainty surrounding family communication. The uncertainty surrounding health. The uncertainty surrounding time. All of those uncertainties combine into a situation that feels increasingly urgent despite appearing unchanged on the surface. then there is another dimension that many people find difficult to ignore. Prince Harry has spoken openly throughout his life about loss. He has spoken about grief. He has spoken about the impact of losing Princess Diana at a young age. He has described the lasting consequences of absence and the emotional scars that can remain long after a loved one is gone. Those experiences shaped much of the person the world knows today. They influenced his outlook, his priorities, and many of the decisions he has made throughout adulthood. That history adds another layer to the current situation. Because few public figures understand the value of time with family more deeply than someone who has experienced profound loss. That is why this story creates such intense reactions from supporters and critics alike. People see the situation through different perspectives, but they all recognize the same stakes. Family relationships matter. Time matters. Presence matters. Those truths exist regardless of status, wealth, geography, or public opinion. And perhaps that is why this story resonates with millions of people who have no direct connection to royalty at all. They recognize themselves within it. The parent who wants to protect their children. The grandparent who wants more time. The family members separated by distance. The disagreements that become larger than anyone expected. The years that disappear while everyone assumes there will always be another chance. Those experiences are universal. They exist in homes across America, across Britain, and across the world. Which brings us back to where this entire story began. A reported condition, a reported silence, and a growing debate about what both truly mean. Maybe the silence represents strategy. Maybe it represents sadness. Maybe it represents a belief that some conversations should happen privately rather than publicly. Or maybe it represents something even simpler. A recognition that not every problem can be solved through pressure. Not every relationship can be repaired through headlines. Not every family conflict has a clear winner. Sometimes there are only consequences. Consequences measured not in media coverage or public opinion, but in moments that never happen. And that is ultimately what makes this story so compelling. Not because it involves kings, princes, or palaces. Not because it dominates news cycles. Not because commentators endlessly debate who is right and who is wrong. But because beneath all the royal symbolism lies a deeply human question. If tomorrow were guaranteed, waiting might make sense. If opportunities lasted forever, postponement might not matter. If time stood still, every disagreement could eventually be resolved without cost. But none of those things are true. Tomorrow is never guaranteed. Opportunities do not last forever, and time moves in only one direction. That is why every passing summer matters. That is why every missed opportunity matters. That is why every year of distance carries weight. As of today, no permanent resolution has been publicly confirmed. No dramatic reconciliation has been announced. The larger questions remain unanswered. The family remains separated by geography, history, and unresolved disagreements. Yet the possibility of change still exists. The possibility of healing still exists. The possibility of a different ending still exists. The real question is whether that ending arrives before the clock makes the decision for everyone involved. Because in the end, security disputes can be revisited. Public narratives can change. Institutional disagreements can evolve. But lost years cannot be recovered. And that may be the single most important truth at the heart of this entire story. Before you go, I want to hear your thoughts on this story. Do you believe Prince Harry is simply doing what any father would do by putting security first? Or do you think enough options already exist for Archie and Lilibet to spend time with King Charles despite the ongoing dispute? And what do you make of the king's reported silence? Was it a smart decision designed to avoid making an already painful situation worse? Or should he have taken a more active role in finding a solution? This story has sparked passionate debate around the world because it touches on something bigger than royalty. It touches on family, forgiveness, distance, and the reality that time keeps moving forward whether people are ready or not. Drop your opinion in the comments below, because this is one of those stories where every perspective tells us something important. If you enjoyed this video, Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss future updates on the royal family, Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, King Charles, Prince William, and the stories making headlines around the world. And if you found this discussion interesting, share it with someone who follows royal news and let them know where you stand on this growing controversy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of the conversation, and we'll see you in the next video.